Everybody, and welcome to the August meeting of the Finance Committee. I declare the meeting open and call for any apologies. I have two apologies, one from Her Worship the Mayor and one from Councillor Green. Are there any other apologies? Happy to move, Councillor Young. Move the apologies. Seconder, Councillor Mallet. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Confirmation of the agenda. I am asking the committee if item 10, which is the proposed easement over the recreation reserve, be brought forward to follow item 4, given that Mr. Wheatley is here to present in the public forum. Are there any other changes to the agenda? And one other item, item 6 in the 10-year monitoring report. There are several pages missing from the start of attachment 4, and those pages have been handed out to elected members, and that's to be inserted just prior to current agenda item page 57. There being no other changes, I'm happy to move confirmation of the agenda, seconded by Councillor Mallet. Those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? All right, let's move now to the public forum. We have one speaker, and that is Mr. Ben Wheatley, who wishes to speak on, or wishes to appear on item 10. Mr. Wheatley has already prepared a handout which Democracy has previously circulated with the agenda to all elected members. So if you're happy to come forward, Mr. Wheatley, to see if there's any questions which elected members may have of your presentation. Are there any questions from elected members?
I'm a little hard of hearing at the moment, sir.
Okay, fine. Councillor King.
Yeah. What item was it, sorry?
It's item number 10 on the agenda, and there is a separate set of pages which were distributed by Democracy when the agendas were sent out, which is Mr. Wheatley's submission to us.
So, Mr. Wheatley, how long have you owned this property?
Since 1985.
And I see the property's been there since 1960.
Sorry, say again?
I see the property has been there since about 1960.
Possibly. I don't know.
And the recreation reserve was set up well after the houses were there.
Yes.
And the houses had access down that right of way before the reserve was designated.
Yes.
And I see from our report, this appears to be where council have put a recreational reserve status over a piece of land that you had to have for access to your property.
Correct, yeah.
And I understand from a legal point of view, every title has to have access to the road.
Yes. Yep.
And there has been a time in the past when the recreation reserve was designated and put in place where council is saying that that was the opportunity for the owners of the land at the time to make a complaint or to say that they wanted a right-of-way put over it, which didn't happen.
You know, it's what I understand, as I put in my folder to you all, is that when the amenity block was built, it exceeded the allowable ground cover, which is 1 in 1100ths. Now, that's not my figure. The lady that lives opposite me across the pipe, she was a university guru on land, and she didn't like the idea of the car park in the back garden. So she did a bit of research And talking from time to time with Bill Featherston and his sidekick, it seemed that they pulled the accesses or the streets, also in Regent Street, into reserve to ease that situation. So I've been trying to find out whether that was a legal scene or not, but unfortunately I just couldn't get that far with it.
So my concern is here is it appears that this is council's doing. There was an opportunity earlier, if you'd been onto it with lawyers, to complain, but to do something about it, to appeal. But I'm concerned about the part of our report which says that you are covering council's legal costs to sort this easement issue out. And how do you feel about that you've got to pay these bills to fix up what appears to be council's mistake, from what I can see?
You're covering the legal costs with the possible exception of the survey fee. Now, in the folder that I've sent round to you all was my title, and on that title it's already been surveyed. There's 790 square metres, that actual area that's involved, that we're talking about. So I don't see the need for a resurvey. $6.5 for something that's already there is a lot of money to me. So I'd like you to consider that one.
So the report that we're looking at today, the staff recommendation, is that you cover all legal costs and any other associated easement costs, and all those costs are on you. How do you feel about that? Do you feel that's fair?
I'll do that, providing you guys think that it's necessary. But this situation has come about not of my making. I was there before the park, and dear old Ross Jansen wanted to keep his name up there, so he named it as a park. I know Ross and Real, so they're good. But everybody I speak to saying, why do you have to pay for something that was already your right? And one of the codes I've always lived by, and I've been self-employed since the age of 26 and worked around the world and so forth. And one of the codes I worked by was do as you will be done by. Now I wonder who else works to that rule. If I didn't want something in my house, that was, I would never do it to anybody else. So, yes, in answer to your question, I'll cover the costs so long as you consider that they are really necessary.
Do you think that's fair, that you should cover the costs?
Not really, no.
No. All right, we'll discuss this further once we have staff here and this paper comes up. So thank you for that, Mr. Wheatley.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Mallett.
Thanks, Mr. Wheatley. Have you read the staff recommendation?
As I say, I'm a bit hard to hear.
Oh, sorry. Have you read the staff recommendation? Are you aware what the staff are recommending to us?
Staff recommendation.
Okay, it's about granting the easement. I guess what I'm asking is, are you, other than the issue of costs, are you comfortable with what the staff are recommending to us?
Apparently so, yes, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, if there's no further questions.
Not a question,
Yep.
Mr. Chair, but I would like a copy of this additional report from Mr. Wheatley. It was not on the FTP site, which is where I download from, and I haven't received an email about it.
So you didn't-
and I've searched that.
You didn't receive this in a
No,
plastic envelope?
no, unless it's in the actual agenda papers. I haven't seen it.
It came out with the agenda papers.
No,
But-
we upload them from.
Yeah, I would have thought this might have been mailed out to you.
iPads won't take the plastic covers.
Well, don't take the plastic. So you haven't seen this, councillor?
No, but
Okay.
thanks now, yeah.
All right. Right, thank you very much, Mr Wheatley. If you'd like to, and we'll now move on to item 10, which is on our agenda, page 100, and we'll consider the report from staff.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. So that ends the public forum. We'll now move on to item 10, the proposed easements over the recreation reserve. And I think, are there two in this report from memory? Or is just this one? There are two. Okay. Thanks, Sally. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Jamie?
Thank you very much. Through the chair, just would like to identify that this report is tidying up two easements relating to public open space. The other item within the report is a retrospective granting of easement for well networks at Embassy Park, and this is to allow a safe power connection for the park development project that is underway with the new toilets being constructed there at the moment. With respect to formalising the historic access arrangements across parkland at Mr Wheatley's property, I would like to propose an amendment to the recommendations of the report, and that is in relation to item 2 under B within the recommendations, that through the discussions had, we would cover the costs for Mr Wheatley with the easement. So we would like to grant him an easement to provide access to his property, and that we will cover that in this situation.
Cover all of the costs.
Can we have the wording of that amendment?
Yeah.
Jane?
Have you got some wording there, Sally?
Is it just a matter of crossing some of the things out that are in
Yeah.
Romans 2, is it?
Certainly. So essentially that in terms of that bullet point 2, that it would just simply be that all costs of preparation and registration of the easement, etc., will be paid by council. So just at the end of reasonable legal costs, we would just put would be covered by council.
So
So
I think in
I'm
this.
just asking democracy if
Yeah,
they have
it's
picked up
important
some
we get the
wording for
wording.
that, so that we're quite clear as to what the wording is.
Yeah,
I agree.
Does
That'd
that
be great.
include survey?
Yes, it will. So we need to do a survey on the site, also drafting of the easement documents as well.
Okay. Right. While democracy are working on a wording, which we'll come back to you on, Sally, is there anything? Are there any other questions in relation to this report from elected members in respect to both Mr Wheatley's property and Embassy Park?
Just a comment. I think that this should have been two reports, one for each easement. I think the way they've been wrapped up together and jumping from one to the other.
Yep.
Just wasn't. It could have been a lot crisper and cleaner had there been separate items.
Yep, I agree. Given that one was a retrospective,
Yeah.
I have a question on the retrospective one. In this respect to the fees, that council, the recommendation here is that council pays the costs. In the past, where it's been retrospective, it generally has attached to it the fact that often the work has already been done and has been done in a way that's been unknown to council until after the work has been done, and generally we have then asked the organisation that undertook the easement to pay those costs. Are the circumstances a little different here in respect to well networks?
Yes, they are, because the well networks equipment that's been installed on site is to enable a safe power supply to the facilities on the park. So it's actually for the betterment use of that park, where in other situations these type of infrastructure easements would be for the pure benefit of that infrastructure and not for the park.
So should the application have been made, I understand there was a trust, I think, that organised most of the work there. Should they or should Well have applied for that easement before the work was done, rather than us picking it up as a retrospective application at this point?
Ideally, yes. However, it was when they got on site to start the works, recognised that there was other opportunities we could do with that infrastructure.
Okay, so we will let them know that in future that is something that needs to be done prior.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so we've got some wording up there now, as Council. That's, as you're happy with that?
Yes, thank you.
So this is this is Roman numeral 2, B Roman numeral 2. Any discussion on?
Yeah, can we just firm that up a bit and put the word survey in there too, and even say that there will be no costs to Mr. Wheatley, to make it very clear, so there can be no misunderstandings.
Okay.
So maybe the word survey needs to go up.
A survey if needed.
Well, there is a survey needed, so
There is a survey needed, is there?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, after reasonable legal costs, maybe in brackets, including survey.
Yeah. And if we put the word all instead of any, would that cover the situation of Mr. Wheatley then not having to incur any costs at all? So change, yeah, all other costs.
I do have a question. Will this fall within the existing budget?
Yes, it will.
All right, so this is a recommendation to council.
Question.
Have a mover?
Yeah, question,
Mr.
yeah.
Chairman, I noticed in Mr. Wheatley's letter of the 8th of August, he talks about a gate. Is this gate still in existence on Morris Road, where he has to open the gate to get into his property? Or is it's gone?
The existing gate has been set back. So
Okay.
So just in response, the existing gate has been set back to further down the road.
Yep.
If there are no other questions, do I have a move?
I'll move.
Yep, thank you, Councillor McPherson. Have a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any discussion or debate on the recommendation?
Just briefly want to say in a generic sense that I personally think we see too many default positions in situations like this to do with easements and boundaries where council is involved, where the first default option is to suggest the costs be put back onto the neighbours rather than onto council. I've seen this for quite a few times over the years, and I'm glad that staff have changed their mind, but I'd like to thank Councillor King for helping them change their mind on the hoof at the last minute. I think we ought to be thinking a bit more proactively about what's fair, and fair to both parties. We always seem to say the default position someone else pays if they want to get in this situation, and it shouldn't be like that. And in most cases, very few of these cases are black and white, certainly not black and white in favour of council, but we always end up saying someone else should pay, and that's not always right or fair.
Thank you for that. All right, is there any debate or discussion on on this motion, which is a recommendation to council? Right, well, by a show of hands, those in favour, please raise their hands. Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Wheatley, for coming in. Okay, now we move back now to agenda item 5, which is the key projects monitoring report. And let's find the page number for that.
5.
Page 5.
Page 5, yep, thank you. Who's presenting that? Are you presenting that?
I'll just take it as read.
Okay, take it as read. Are there any questions on the key projects monitoring report as at June 2016?
Just a bit of a comment, the Hamilton Ring Road upgrade extension, and then the risks 2, 3 and 5, this is on page 7, are all high. But we've still got this in amber. I presume it's because, I presume it's in amber even although the risks are high because management have got it still under control. Because when you read the definition of high, it needs urgent management attention, so it's obviously management are comfortable by flagging it to us in amber, but and even with high risks all over it, and even although it says it's unaffordable and the budget's not there, it's still in amber. And I just wonder whether it should have been in red or whether there's another plan somewhere that we don't know about.
So the attachment on page 7 is for the period up to the end of June. So what has happened since then is there was a report through to council on the 28th, I think it was, of July. Just let me check that date. Yes, 28th of July, where the scope of the project has changed. So those comments and that risk rating relates to the previous intersection treatment, the roundabout. So that now that council's resolved to change the scope of the project, all those risks and the classification will just fundamentally alter as we bring forward the next key project update report.
Yeah. Thank you.
So why, on that same point, if I may, why are we getting an out-of-date risk analysis?
I think the project report is really in line with the 10-year monitoring report, which is covering the June financials or the end of year financials. So everything is in alignment with that end of year financials.
Yeah, but that's 6 weeks ago, and even if that's the formal situation, we should get a note to the effect of the update. Andrew shouldn't have to be questioned on something like that in a meeting, surely, on something that's quite a big issue in terms of infrastructure.
Yes. Correct. We'll note that, thank you.
So it's all fixed now? Yes.
All right. Thank you for that question. Any other questions on the key monitoring report, key projects monitoring report? Okay.
Probably the same questions on page 8. Under the water treatment plant upgrade, and the project may be undeliverable is under risk 1 and 2. I mean, those are serious comments, and it's still an amber.
So the business cases for the treatment plant upgrade, the water treatment plant upgrade's been recently approved. The project's only in early stages yet. There's some emerging information that there could be some cost matters to deal with, but it's only emerging, and there's still a lot of development work to do on the project. My view is, as we come to the next LTP, we'll have a better understanding, where that would be tracking in terms of financial. So at this point, it's amber. It's only emerging information, but subject to a lot of further investigation and design and procurement.
Thank you.
Councillor Mallett and then Councillor McPherson.
Thanks, Andrew. Can I just suggest in that wording's not very appropriate? I mean, what Andrew's highlighted, that the project may not be deliverable within the current approved budget. I mean, that's quite dire to me. So if it's what you say, that just maybe it's another report needs to come up. That wording needs to be changed, I think. Or that, yeah,
Agree. We can look at that for the next report.
okay. Thank you.
Dave?
Thanks. The same issue also applies to the one at the bottom of page 7, Puketi 3 wastewater treatment plant, going on to the top of page 8. The same type of comments are made there, and it leaves me wondering whether the business case that's been put forward as part of the long-term plan has taken account of current or the latest population growth projections for Hamilton, whether that's what's causing the scope to be enlarged and therefore the cost to be higher than can be met through the budget, and whether whether there is a mismatch between, whether we're looking at some really early figures or some really conservative growth figures when we're making these business cases several years out. We're not taking account of the very obvious growth projections that have changed in quite recent times, or the acceptance that we're on a higher growth curve than was originally envisaged. I don't know whether you got a comment on that, Andrew.
Just before you comment on that, Andrew, if I can just add to that comment that Dave's made, the other factor that might also put the original business case at risk is whether or not, because of the perhaps more improved buoyancy in the market, that in fact the costs associated with that work may have also gone up in terms of what we kind of estimated the cost to be at the time that the business case was put. So there's kind of not just the population, but there's the market factors that might also be influencing our ability to deliver the project from what we had originally, from what was originally approved in the business case.
How nimble are our financial projections?
And there's a third limb too, which is just about achieving consent compliance and the challenges in that space as we go forward, as the bar goes up in terms of compliance. So just in terms of the population growth question, so the team are using current projections and figures, so I'm comfortable in that space. In terms of the market comment, it's my observation in recent weeks is we're potentially heading into a phase in this region where there's a lot of projects out on the market, potentially in the billions of dollars, with Waikato Expressway constructions. There's a whole raft of projects in the greater Waikato area, so that may have an impact on pricing at the time we go to market in the future years. And in terms of compliance, yes, the compliance is a very challenging space, and we're trying to deliver live projects on a live operational treatment plant. So there's some challenges in that space. So what I'm suggesting is that it's not a matter for this financial year. So we'll continue to do the best investigations and understand the options in terms of achieving the project outcomes that were signed off in the business case. I think if there's going to be an issue, it'll be a matter for discussion in the LTP process as we take the more larger chunks of the project through to a procurement phase in future years. Because remember, these are multi-year projects that span a 5 and 6 year window. So it's just wanted to signal there's some emerging pricing information, but it's just emerging and it shouldn't impact on the project within this given financial year.
Nevertheless, there's an interesting little event coming up in a couple of months' time during which council's debt and future costs are going to be heavily debated, I'm quite sure. It would be helpful for, if you're saying let's wait until the next LTP and the incoming council gets a surprise, one of the things that we've got a duty, I think, as an existing council is to say we need a better handle on costs, given what you're saying right now. Maybe, I'm sure you won't be able to get exact figures or anything like that, but if the costs are looking like running, at latest estimate 15% higher, at a total guess there, then there should be some information that, some formal information that goes out from council to that effect, I would think, and maybe that's a comment to the CEO. We've got a sort of a duty to present the latest, most accurate sort of information we can in the financial sphere to everyone that's involved in the elections coming up and the incoming council.
Yep, no, I agree with you, Councillor McPherson. So note the GM's taking notes and we'll follow up on that.
Thank you.
And if at the next Finance Committee, if we have more robust information, as well as the likelihood, because the likelihood's the issue, and what Andrew's painted here is a degree of a degree of likeliness that's quite low, but we could probably provide a range that at least provides indicative information that be aware there could be a 5-10% overrun, but that might be in probability 20%, for example, or something to that effect. So we'll do our best to give as clean and clear information as we can. So, yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Any further questions?
Yes, I've just got one about
Councillor Forsyth.
the other amber status, the district plan review. So there was some narrative around it, but I just wondered how many more appeals we have yet to settle, if any, and when can we expect the next report? I presume most of it would be in public excluded, but if we've got a budget overrun, I wouldn't mind knowing what that is without having to...
So if I can, we're just waiting on the court orders to be issued, and then we will bring those forward. So we're dependent on the court bringing the last orders through from the last appeals. And then, yes, that will be in a PX form.
Sorry, that will be when?
Dependent on the court, so we are aiming for the last council meeting of this term. But again, we're dependent on the court to provide those orders.
So you'll give us an update on the status of those remaining appeals?
Sorry, I missed that.
We'll know what's happening with the remaining appeals, is that correct, or only the ones that have gone to court?
So there's only the one remaining.
Only one?
Yeah, only the one, and that we've been to the court and we're waiting on those consent orders, and they will come through. When they come through, we can then bring the final report to you.
Okay, what about the budget overrun then? It sounds like it's going to be absorbed, but I mean, are we allowed to know what that is?
We can include that within the final reports or the budget costing to that stage, but again, we are dependent on the court final delivery of those things. So it's always difficult to plan and budget for any district plan process, and the assessments and the timeframes can be very long. This one is, relative to other councils in the country, has been relatively short, but again, budgets are difficult depending on the number of appellants we get, the number of issues.
So it's just one, and we're waiting for the court report on that.
Correct. And then once we get the court orders, we can then bring that formally to council with all of that information.
Thank you.
All right, the recommendation for this report is that the report be received. I'm happy to move. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Mallett. Is there any debate on the report? Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Now move on to item 6 on page 9, which is the 10-year monitoring report. Welcome, Tracy.
Good afternoon, councillors and chairman. I would like to present today the 10-year monitoring report for the year ended the 30th of June 2016, which starts on page 9 of the agenda. I will take the report as read, but I do wish to highlight some positives relating to council's financial performance for the 2016 year, as well as a few other key points. The year-end financial results presented in this report are in the process of being audited. As such, these results should be considered draft, as it's always possible that changes may be identified through the audit process. The final audited result will be presented at the September council meeting. Council has completed the financial year reporting favourable positions across the key financial performance measures, balancing the books, debt to revenue ratios and our debt levels. Our operating result for the year is a surplus of $9.9 million compared to a budget of $9.2 million. This is a favourable variance of $637,000 to budget. Council has also achieved a balancing the book surplus for the year of $12.8 million. This is $12 million favourable against the budgeted surplus of $800,000. There were two significant year-end accounting adjustments that explain the movement from the May result. These were the revaluations related to Council's landfill provision and the impairment of Council's investment in the Waikato Innovation Park. They are non-operating adjustments and are therefore excluded from the balancing the book measure. Our total overall debt was $348 million, which is $58.8 million less than the year-end target of $406.8 million. Our 12-month rolling debt to revenue ratio finished the year at 170%, which is below the annual target of 205%. For the year ended 30th of June 2016, Council completed 97 capital programs of work at a total capital investment of $69 million. There were 31 capital projects or programs of work to the value of $21.4 million that have not been completed and require budget deferral into the 2016-17 financial year. The list of those projects is on page 60 of the agenda. And if I may, Mr Chair, point B of the resolution needs to be changed to reflect the 2016-17 year, not the 17-18 year.
You'll be pleased about that, Councillor. Thought I had a year off to stop grizzling about carryovers. So I'll keep on grizzling now.
I don't think we'll stop you, Councillor.
Nothing.
I'd be happy to take any further questions.
Thanks, Tracy. Other questions on the 10-year monitoring report? Councillor Mallett.
Just the debt situation, which is $58.8 million favourable to our expectations, which on the face of it is good. Just to put it into some context though, about 60% of that debt under position comes from the failure to deliver on our capital project, which is 21.4 million, which you've already spoken about. And also there's the huge increase in development levies by about 14.7 million. So that's 36 million, which is about 61% of the 58. And just putting that into context before we sort of crack open the champagne bottles and whatnot and slap ourselves on the back, the carryover or the capital projects failed to be delivered. Putting that into context, that's sort of an analogy. That's like a family saying, we've got no mortgage, but we haven't got a house either, because each of these capital projects was the equivalent of, for a community, houses, isn't it? There's a big list of them on the page here somewhere, and they're water plants, and they're roads, and they're all sorts of things like that. So it just concerns me that we are applauding the good news, which is the reduction in our debt, but we're not mentioning any, well, other than saying there are some projects which need to be rolled over, the bad news, which is that there's a whole lot of things that should have been done that haven't been done. So,
So is the question.
so what do you think of that? What else can I say?
Would you agree?
Yeah, well, I mean, it just concerns me that because we're the guys that's supposed to look after, see what you guys execute. You know, we give you the plan to do and deliver, and for decades and decades, I've been grizzling about it, and it's been happening that we don't deliver on our capital program. There is a slight benefit to us for that, because we rate for the assumed interest that was going to be collected, that was going to be accrued for that, delivering that. Now that's not a big figure, and so I'm not saying that's a game changer, but there's our ratepayer or our citizens and residents are missing out again. And I mean, we're not talking small beer, it's about a third of our program.
That's
It's
correct.
massive. If it was a private sector, this would be called, the board of directors would be fired, and the shareholders would be furious. But somehow we just skate on by.
You only get a question.
I think there's a question in there. I think was, can I answer? Because you asked what my opinion was. So we'll ask everyone what their opinion was. So anyone else can chip in as well if they choose to. Your analogy was actually quite apt. We've got no debt because we didn't spend the money, and so that's.
Well, more important, we didn't deliver the road or the
But the key part I want to draw your attention to is page 14, paragraph 34, in terms of the context of the deferrals, Councillor. And we do our best to estimate the level of capital expenditure required for any particular period, and always there is a degree of reliance on the information received by counterparties in terms of those arrangements. And as you can see, that a significant portion of those are due to third-party and contractual issues. To address that, we do make an allowance within our interest calculations in the order of about $10 million, I think, GM. When we do our annual plan, we assume $10 million of projects for those external regions, we do as much emphasis on the work as we can. We interrogate and we challenge. We have a very good relationship with our developers and so forth, but things happen. Would not be done. So,
Sorry, just to be clear what you're saying, we assume that $10 million worth of work won't get done, therefore $10 million worth of debt won't be accrued, therefore $10 million worth of interest, the interest on that $10 million won't be factored into our rates. So we do try.
Yeah, we do try our best, and I think if you recall, Councillor Mallett, that was something we discussed, and as a mechanism to try and address those concerns you've raised, and you've been consistent in raising those concerns. Every year we try our best to look at those, and we also try our best, and you referred to in paragraph 35, to look for opportunities to get ahead on the next curve of capital programs as well, to balance that as well. So that's just the context I wanted to add into that.
I guess, sorry to continue, but the context is this isn't the first time it's happened. It happened when I was a kid in shorts, my first time I was here, and so it just keeps going, and it's a sickness that seems to be, I don't know if it happens to all local authorities.
I disagree with it being a sickness. The issue is, what's the lesser of two evils? We could either do our best to estimate as best we can, pull it back some to be conservative in terms of the program we're going to deliver, and aim as best we can. We've got all the project management practices in place to achieve that. Or we go back extreme line, and then we end up spending money we haven't rated for. We end up borrowing more and actually costing the council more debt through actually the cumulative impact of cost of funds. So we try and do our best to get it right, Councillor McPherson. I'm sorry to both of you.
Please,
don't
equate.
Yeah, so I said sorry to both of you, sorry. So that's the best we do. And it is an issue, and it's not only, you mentioned before, the corporate world, it is an issue in the corporate world as well, but the difference in the corporate world is they manage their portfolio of capital projects based on the capital project delivery dates, not based on year end. And so they'll work for a delivery date. And associated, you're correct, if they don't deliver on those delivery dates, there are repercussions.
Okay. Dave, you had some questions.
Thanks. Yes, I'd like to concur that Gary has indeed been grizzling for decades on this. 18 years ago, I heard him on the same subject. But what I would say to what the Chief Executive said is that it's all very well to say we do our best and there's third-party causes to this, but we're always overestimating. I've never yet seen an underestimating. So we do need to tighten up in that area. We've never gone the other way, so we've never gone in the area you fear.
Yep.
Nor that we should, but we could get it closer, I think, is the point Councillor Mallett's making.
The question I was going to ask am I allowed to ask questions? Ask the Finance Manager of that 21.38 million, how much of that was funded by NZTA? Because, I mean, ultimately this is a cash... Yes, Councillor McPherson, I agree with you. We have to get better at it, and we might well adjust it more than $10 million for the next 10-year plan and make it a $15 million adjustment and so forth. That $21 million is the capital cost, of which some of those roading projects will have a contribution by NZTA against them, which will reduce that number down. It might be closer to the 10 million number, but I don't have that information in front of me to confirm that.
I would have hoped the CEO would have got that beforehand, since he wanted to ask a question at the meeting. But anyway, look, my question wasn't on that. It was related to, on page 12, about just under halfway down, rates including metered water. I'm not worried about the water meters on commercial properties, but what I am worried about is the comment due to more water being sold to domestic users than we'd budgeted for. I know when we last got a water take consent from the regional council.
That says non-domestic, Dave.
Non-domestic.
Yeah, sorry, right, did I, yeah, meant commercial.
So that's the end of your question.
Gary, commercial. I know that we were concerned about having sufficient water allowed under the resource consent to enable new businesses, a reasonable amount of new business to start up. And there's been growth in that area. The water use is growing, obviously faster than we anticipated. Are we running a risk? This is a sort of a non-financial question arising. Are we running a risk of getting near the ceiling of our water take? Because of these commercial higher than anticipated users?
Short answer is no. So at the moment there's significant difference between the limit in our take and what the city as a whole uses. Just to give you a sense of scale, so at the moment the city's consented to take 116 million litres per day from the river, and there's steps, so in future years that will potentially step up and up to follow the growth curve. Last summer, the peak day, because that's the constraint, the peak day from memory was about 89 or 90 million litres of water per day. So there is sufficient headroom to provide for economic growth and development, and that's something that's checked in on fairly frequently throughout the course of the year. If I just look at our top 10 water users, and I'll just drop Fonterra away because they're so significant, but if I look at the others, this number two top water users is just over 1 million litres, and it just drops down quite rapidly after that. So I'm comfortable there's sufficient headroom to accommodate city growth forecast into the future and to accommodate city growth today.
Okay. Even with the accelerated growth patterns that we're seeing looking forward?
That is my expectation at this point in time, yes. And it will change as we revisit the growth curves and future LTPs, but at the moment, I'm comfortable that there is sufficient water allocation to meet city needs going forward.
In the report maybe to the incoming council at some stage would it be possible to have a graph showing the expected usage, maximum usage, and what with those steps built in, what our allowable take is, just so that we can sort of do some due diligence in that area, or those that are back on council?
Absolutely happy to provide that.
Could we please get recorded that as an action? Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Councillor King.
So back to Andrew Parsons. Does Waikato and Waipa have that same comfort?
I would be guessing, but what I do know is the future-proof group, which represents a number of councils in the sub-region, so Waipa, Waikato, Hamilton, have looked at the water needs in terms of the future-proof forecasted growth projections, and then they've compared that against the total suite of allocation consents held by those councils. My recollection, and I'd need to go back and check, but there's still sufficient allocation at a macro level, so there may not be per council, but as a whole of sub-region, my recollection is that there is sufficient allocation between all of the councils. So I can't answer you specifically on the individual councils, but...
So you're suggesting that there isn't enough, but if we all join up, there will be enough because we'll share it?
Point of order, this is finance. Why are we talking about shared water services or intakes for Waikato and Waipa?
Because we have to look at the future, and there's a comment in here about larger than expected water use.
Actually, I think it was Councillor King I pointed that to. He asked the question. I can't see the relevance, but I'm happy to hear from the chair.
Well, I'm happy that the discussion to this point continue, because there is a point being made here about the water and the cost and the availability of water. So I'm happy with the last question that Councillor King has asked.
Yeah, just arising out of Mr. Andrews' comment there about future-proof projections, a very recent discussion around this table, there was widespread agreement, including from management, that the future-proof growth projections were too low, weren't taking account of growth that was actually happening and now expected to happen. So, I mean, maybe my question before about the table of use versus permission to use for water should be both citywide and sub-region wide as well, because that will potentially have an impact on CCO discussions at some point.
Mr. Chair, just for clarity, I think that the discussion was more around the growth projections was about bringing, if I recall, if I've got you right, was about bringing in the neighbouring lands earlier than what we projected in terms of the H1 in the area currently sitting in our existing neighbourhood. It wasn't specifically related to the use of servicing and water usage at that point.
Yes, but if there are increased residential and commercial developments, if it's happening faster, it won't be just in Hamilton, it'll be also in some of the surrounding areas. So therefore, I think Councillor King's question related to the commercial water needs in the surrounding, the other two districts, and therefore the sub-region. So I'm saying that those figures that that Mr Parsons is relying on may be out of date as well, that we may have, sub-region wide increased need for water, and just checking that we're going to be able to, all the consents available are going to be able to meet that.
Yep, so one of the processes that Future Proof is currently working on is trying to rationalise our various growth forecasts across the sub-region. We had challenged the numbers they had for Hamilton as being too high compared to the stats medium line. They were using the Nydia line, which is even greater than the stats high line, and it was far greater than what we were expecting to see. Waipa and Waikato were using another set of lines that both them had issues with, so we're working together as a sub-region to actually validate that and come up with one set of data for the entire sub-region. So I think that all information will be useful for the new council to understand and what that looks like, as well as to relate it back to that water allocation issue as well, councillor. So we'll add that to the action list.
So when's that likely to be available?
It possibly and probably won't be available before the end of this term, councillor. They're still working on it.
Right. Thank you. You got further question?
So this is probably for you, Tracy. Where is our liability showing for our swap rate position?
What page?
It's page 19.
Page 17.
Sorry. So on page 19, derivative financial instruments, which is note 6. So there's two, there's one under current liabilities, but if you see under the non-current liabilities, it's the 48.541.
Could you give us page numbers when you're doing that?
It's
Tracy?
page 20,
Page 19,
page 22 is where the note is.
and page 22 is where the note is. Note 6.
So we've got a liability there of $48 million.
Correct.
And that's not reflected in our $350 odd million debt that we're carrying, is it? This is...
No.
And that's gone up markedly again in the last month with another 0.25% drop, which won't be showing in here, in interest rates.
Sorry, it won't be showing where?
This won't show the latest drop that we've just had this month
Oh,
of
no.
a third, 0.25%.
No.
And we, to the chief executive, were we waiting for a report to come back to us on this?
Yeah, that's correct, September.
Council meeting
Oh.
this month
Oh, this,
at the
next
council
week.
meeting.
Sorry, next week's council meeting, Councillor King.
And that's on track to be delivered?
The report's written already.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. On page 12, we've got, on the graph there at the top, we've got planning and development revenue, which is better than expected. And if you have a look at it, it says strong growth occurred in Hamilton, resulting in increased volumes of building consents, NIM applications. I understand we're not allowed to make profit in this area. It's a break-even operation, so it's a fee that has to only cover its... we have to charge what it costs to do the job, and we're not allowed to make profit
Correct.
on this fee structure. So why are we calling it revenue? And what are we doing with the profit or the extra income? And are we going to review our fees? Or
So this is obviously variance to budget. The budget's normally catered at conservative numbers. So the growth, when we set the budgets, aren't known. And as we know, the growth has occurred in the 2015 year predominantly, and it continues into this year. So that accounts for that. But also, this doesn't also account for the cost factor. This is only the revenue side. And of course, we're not looking at the revenue side of that as well. And when you do look at the revenue notes and activity, you'll see that there's an increase in the amount of consultancy use to leverage that out. So that will explain that. But to your point about fees, yes, there is a plan in place to look at our review of our fees. And part of that is actually tracking time and cost application of all the staff and the processes within that. So it's a fair call, and we are looking at that.
thank you. Is that when is that review going to be complete?
So we looked at, when I first started here in February, we had looked at undertaking a review of the planning guidance team, and the consulting firm found that we didn't have enough data to capture the time and motion study, if you like, of actual staff. So we've implemented now how that will be done, so that each consent has been captured by how long staff spend on each aspect of applications, so we can actually gather some data and then look at that. So that should be done through this year.
Thank you. On page 17, under revenue, we've got development and financial contributions, which are way up on budget.
Yes.
Maybe this is a question for the CE. Would it be fair to say that our financial situation is looking so healthy because of these huge unexpected windfall of DCs that have come in?
It's not fair to say it's correct. It's a correct statement.
Sorry?
That's a correct statement.
So our books are looking really good because of the huge increase in DCs?
Yep. So development contributions are a capital revenue, but they have to be reported for accounting purposes in the operating statement. The capital costs sit in the balance sheet, but of course with development contributions, some of those costs haven't been incurred yet, as we collect the development contributions in some cases earlier than the underlying investment in the asset.
So there's a liability back on council for this huge windfall that's coming in to be reinvested back into infrastructure.
It's an obligation, not a legal liability, but we do have an obligation. If council, for example, makes a decision to not undertake a project currently included in the 10-year plan, it could be in year 9 of the 10-year plan, for example, and make a resolution to not do that project, and we've collected development contributions for that project, we have to repay that money to the developer that we received it from. We are not in that position, though. We have not ever been in that position. We've always undertaken the projects we said we were going to undertake, that we've collected development contributions for.
So is it correct to have them sitting on that side of the ledger, or should they be in a ledger of their own? Because they aren't. I understand your question, Councillor King. We are aware, and we do track, and we'll report that in the next finance report, the extent to which we have an obligation to invest in that infrastructure. So we'll provide that information for you, so that will achieve what you're trying to achieve. From an accounting point of view, this is the generally accepted accounting practice way of presenting this information. And I agree, it's mildly misleading. So I suppose that brings me to my next question of, are we investing back into infrastructure fast enough for the money that's coming in, for the stock that's being used up, and for us to keep the product rolling through, if you like, or making development land serviceable so that it can be subdivided? How do we know that we're investing the money that's coming in quickly enough and in a way that's that's going to keep the whole production line, for want of a better word,
I understand.
moving forward in the right time frame.
I understand the question, Councillor King. So my take on it is we are investing in at the right pace. It probably reflects in terms of the briefing that was provided to councillors earlier in the week in terms of we do have a number of pieces of land that are ready for the developer to build dwellings on, and I think from memory we have 3,433 dwelling equivalents in that respect. With development contributions, we can't take a development contribution for projects we haven't planned to do. So the money we received is for those projects we plan to do. We are constantly monitoring and looking at that, and if you recall in the annual plan we brought forward three projects in the annual plan out of the cycle of the 10-year plan because we were going faster. We're having noises from the developers to go ahead. If we ever had a conversation with the developer, they believe they wanted to go even faster again, we would bring further reports back to council to drive that. At the moment, we think we've got it about right. You can never be absolute on these things because it's estimates, but about right.
The question I'd normally ask now is why are the no sections titled on the market, but I'm still waiting for questions back on that to staff, so I'll wait for the outcome of those questions.
I've almost got those questions together for you, Councillor King.
Thank you. On page 50. Where is the comms department in this budget?
Sorry,
Or
where is the...
the comms department for
Yes.
council? Where is...
Communications unit, I think he's referring to.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry. It's in, I mean, obviously overheads and support units, we have quite a few, so it's one of the many cost centres in their activity.
So we haven't got a breakdown any further than this in this report?
No.
So where does City News fit? Do they fit under the communications budget?
Yes.
They'll probably sit within the administrative costs section, I would suggest, financial controller.
Yeah, yes, I said yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, I would like to put a amendment to the motion when we're ready, or put a motion up separate, probably possibly even put a motion up separately
Okay, we'll call on that when we're ready after we've finished questions.
about City News. They're probably ahead of us voting on the staff recommendation.
Okay, well, we'll have a look at that when we finish the questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor King. You've got another question,
Yeah.
Councillor Mallett? Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Just triggering off, Calvin, just triggering off Andrew's comment about the fees, consent fees and building fees and all that sort of stuff, and that is an area where we are cost recovery only. Yep. Presumably, almost by definition, if the activity goes up, the fees should start coming down, shouldn't they? Because somewhere along the line there's only one Calvin, there's only one Richard Briggs, there's only, no matter how many things we're doing, there's only one mayor and 12 councillors. There's a lot of overhead costs that go into that don't rise just because our activity... Now, I know there will be some operating, you'll have to get on more staff, but not all of your costs will go up. So would we be right to expect a reduction in fees?
In theory, that's right. The problem we've got is actually getting the recruitment to actually have that on board. So
Sorry?
the problem we've got is finding the recruitment to get people on board to enjoy that, because the theory is correct. If you've got a set, the only variable cost you're then covering are those who are out there doing the field for the work specifically. You've got fixed costs sitting inside the overhead costs. But there
Because
is
even if we get 3 more staff, 5 or 6 more staff, we'll still have the same amount of office space. And, yeah.
although there is a different threshold that as you bring on 3 more field staff, you may need 1 staff inside to service that. So, but the issue we have is that because we can't get the recruitment directly to employ, we are using more consulting firms at a higher cost. So yes, in theory you are correct, but it's not the reality at the moment, simply because we can't get the numbers to fill those positions we would have, so therefore we're having to use resource contractors. So that's why we're not seeing a necessary different fees. But in theory, yes, you're correct. All things being equal, that's what you would see.
Okay, thank you. And just what Andrew was talking about just before, and Richard, and the collection of development levies, I remember asking about this, about collecting development levies in advance of doing work, which therefore creates a liability, which you claim is not a liability, so long as it's in our 10-year plan. But we still have an obligation, and the staff did a report to find out how much prepaid development fees we'd got, and work we hadn't shown, which we hadn't delivered work on, which to me, in my mind, says there must be a liability there somewhere. So is your position, because I think...
My position is I tend to agree that we have an obligation,
yeah,
and we need to meet that obligation. So we've collected DCs, we've got to put that piece of kit in. But of course, when you put the kit in, you get an asset and a liability as well. And so from a strict accounting definition, it doesn't meet the strict accounting definition of liability. I prefer to refer to it as an obligation.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a contract to put the asset in. Yeah. We have an undertaking to build the asset, of which we'll incur a liability at the same time to fund it, which we've already received money in advance of, as well as the responsibility to pay for the asset as well.
And because it's such a material figure nowadays, I mean, that is the thing, and I think it's the same thing Andrew's concerned about, is that window dressing's too bland a statement, but we're emphasising the positive, which you're supposed to do, and eliminating the negative. We're telling everyone our debt's less than it was projected to be, but we've got all this, call it a liability, call it an obligation, to put a whole lot of things in, be they plants or roads or all sorts of things, which we don't show up on our... The good side shows up, the cash we've collected shows up, and you can see that in the balance sheet, but you can't see the liability anywhere, can you?
That's correct. I attempted to try and model that when I was the CFO, and as a note, the issue we've got is some of the obligations to spend the money are out in multiple periods, so you're starting to record a liability you haven't yet incurred in terms of the asset investment, and to be fair, it became quite complex. So the way we communicate that to councillors is when we refresh the debt curve as part of the LTP scenario, so we reassess our investment in terms of the asset requirements, and if we have to bring something forward, of course that year's debt goes up, and that's the way we communicate it. So we reprofile our debt against our intended new spend from an infrastructure point of view.
That isn't very clear to councillors, though.
No, I think we can do a better job in splitting that out.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just follow on with that question, because I think last time this matter was raised about the development contributions being received in advance of us undertaking the work, and what our obligation might be to pay the developers back if we didn't carry out that work. And my recollection is that the calculation that staff provided, and so I'm going to lead this on to a question, was about $2 million. And I guess the question is now, has that increased significantly? And given the sizable amount of development contributions that we're receiving over and above budget, has that figure, to me $2 million is not material in the context of the size of the capital spend in the 10-year plan, but has that amount increased significantly?
I'm unaware of the exact number. I can't recall the $2 million. Everything that Councillor McPherson and Councillor King, McPherson against her, why am I doing that? Councillor Mallet and Councillor King said is theoretically correct. The other thing you've got to be aware of is we're already carrying some debt at this point in time by which we expected the development contributions to go ahead, but we're going faster, so we're collecting more debt, more repayments to get against that debt faster than we're already carrying as well. So there's some historical aspect which reduces the overall liability down, but if you gross it out, there are still some assets in the future by which we receive development contributions for. Some assets in the past we've already invested in, we've received the payments on faster, they net out to that $2 million. So we need to pull both sides out and give you both sides.
So is it difficult to have that figure available?
It'll be a theoretical assessment, but we can do it.
Sorry, it'll be
a theoretical assessment, but we can do it.
Yeah, okay. I wonder whether that shouldn't become part of the report, even if it's an estimated, even if it is the best known figure at that time, just so that we get an idea as to whether or not the balance is
We'll bring that forward, probably do it quarterly, because it does require a lot of work. If
Okay.
we were to do it every month, it was just a whole lot of administrative costs that we'd have to try and absorb.
Or could we put that on the action list to see what the mechanics and the
Yep.
and the cost effectiveness of bringing that figure forward? Because we do hear from time to time on a regular basis, not only from developers but also from elected members, that we are collecting and I've seen the word significant used in the media, amounts of development contributions before we've actually undertaken the work.
And the other thing just to remember is, even though we're going faster, it may not yet trigger the requirement for that infrastructure investment, because it's not necessarily a linear approach, it may be a stepped approach. So that is a very complex scenario. We'll do our best to map it out as simply as we can.
Okay, thank you. All right, any further questions?
So just to Richard, so just putting this together, so by putting more infrastructure projects into the long-term plan, DCs would increase, which would allow council to gear up our infrastructure program to help build a faster growing city than what we expected.
It comes down, theoretically, yes. It comes down to the analysis of who gets benefit from that infrastructure. Is it citywide? Is it, and so forth? Who causes the need for the investment? But it also comes down to the pace of growth. So we could put, for an example, in the bridge into Peacocks, and $100 million, I think, is a rough number. Let's say, don't quote me on that, Mr. Media. A amount close to $100 million. But if we only get one section away, our DCs aren't going to grow, aren't going to shoot up. We need to have a robust business case for our investments to understand what the corresponding growth is by investing in that amount. And if anything we do, if it doesn't have a return, then it's a lot harder to argue for that outcome.
So if we'd put more infrastructure projects into the long-term plan 2 long-term plans ago, instead of culling infrastructure projects, DCs would be at a higher level. The income that we would have coming in now would be much higher to pay for those, and we'd be in a far better position to cope with the bottleneck we have right now in sections.
No, that's not necessarily the case, Councillor King, because it comes down to the growth projections. In 2012, when we did our 10-year plan, the growth projections were a lot lower, and it didn't, at that point in time, when we did our assessment and estimates, require us to invest a significant amount of capital into the 10-year plan. In fact, there was a bit of a blip down coming out of the GFC, then a much flatter curve heading out from a growth perspective. So at that point in time, all the information we had available, we didn't require that investment. And it's probably the infrastructure we took out would probably be an investment in roughly this period, and they were talking about now, this year and next year. And the significant number of dwellings that would have got away wouldn't have significantly changed our development contribution revenue either. But that's sort of the question you asked me earlier that I'm trying to work through, and I want to give you exact information on that, Councillor.
Thank you.
All right, questions over. Let's move to the staff recommendation.
Could I put my motion up?
Yeah,
It's a
that's
separate
fine.
matter.
You want to put you want to add your motion?
No, before the staff recommendation.
Before the staff recommendation, okay. Have you got that ready to go up on the board?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, there's been no discussion, no reports, no information. I think it's highly irrelevant. However, he should test
I'll
it.
second it.
You're seconding the motion or seconding Councillor Chesterman's comments?
And not until he gets a
Thank you,
report. I want a report about what you just said then.
Okay.
A report on your talk about there'd be no report.
Councillor Mallett? Okay. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor King?
I understood we have questions before debate.
Well, we're happy to have questions, but
Do you want me to?
I'm
Go-
happy
yeah,
to
background.
take questions, yeah, if there are questions on the suggested motion.
Are you suggesting we go straight to debate, or do you want me to?
Well, yeah, I wasn't sure whether there'd be questions. It seems to me to be quite clear what your motion is intending to do. We've got no report to ask questions on, but if there are some questions from elected members, happy for that to happen first.
But there has been an official information request reply that has been distributed to all members. Everyone in this room
But
received
that's not
it.
part of the agenda of this meeting.
I'd like a report personally before we decide. I'm not prepared to make a decision on a statement that's had no context, no background here at council, and it's not even on the agenda as far as I can see.
I'm prepared to move an amendment.
Mr Chair,
Well,
sorry,
it's-
point of order. I believe that it's entirely in order for a councillor to move, and especially if another seconds it.
So what's the point of order?
If you'll shut up, I'll
I
finish
beg your
this.
pardon?
I said if you'll
Please,
shut up, I'll finish.
Just
Chair,
Well, I was
that's
stopped
inappropriate
I was stopped in the middle of,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I was stopped in the middle of the point of order, which shall
order,
not be
please.
interrupted.
Please allow Councillor McPherson
Thank
to
you.
finish, and then you can have your point
I
of order.
believe under standing orders, it's entirely in order for a motion that is moved and seconded to be discussed here. I was going to add that informally you might ask the mover and or seconder for an explanation, which may lead to some questions as a suggestion, but that it can't be stopped if there's a move.
Okay, I'm happy. Look, I'm happy that the motion has been tabled at the meeting. To me, it seems very clear. But if questions are wishing, if there are questions that need to be asked or wanting to be asked, then let's do that.
I guess I was asking through you, sorry, Mr Chair, that we could ask for an explanation from the move of the motion, because I'm not sure that the document he refers to has actually been seen by everyone,
Okay, that's fine.
or sent to everyone, yeah.
I'd like to move an amendment, given the opportunity.
Okay,
Can I just
okay. I'll
explain what Dave said, just clarification on what Dave just said?
happy for that.
So I understood that everyone received, I was sure everybody was CC'd in on my official information request.
As the Chief Executive responded, I responded to all council in terms of Councillor King's query. If I didn't, I apologise.
My system showed everybody on there when it came through.
Some others have shaken their head as well, Andrew.
Yeah. So are you? If everyone has read that, I guess the surprise aspect to this is that, and I do recall it coming through on my email, but I guess the surprise aspect is that we didn't expect to be prepared to discuss the contents of that email at this meeting.
I wonder if someone could assist me. I recall an external, was it a Hamilton, one of the local papers reporting on the issue as a result of an OIA. I recall that particular media story that was circulated actually from our communications section. But has there been a memo from the Chief Executive?
Yes, there was. I'm just trying to find the date that I forwarded that out.
What date was that, sorry? It might be my error, I apologise. I've got retail truck permits, that's another one.
Look, I think
so that was sent out. Sorry. So it was sent on the 1st of August to all councillors.
Thank you.
And it was titled July City News, Claudelin's article.
But didn't that relate in particular to that edition and the removal of an article that was incorrect and that was being trashed? I did recall getting that email, but nothing to do with whether City News should be abolished because of one mistake in
potentially 36 issues.
This wasn't a mistake. That's official information requests clearly shows that comms are supposed to run City News, but it actually has ended up with political input, particularly from the Mayor's office. The Mayor and the Chair of the meeting today were involved in the article.
That is not, no, that is incorrect. That is incorrect. That is incorrect.
Ask them to withdraw it.
Yeah,
No.
that statement is
No,
incorrect.
that's what came back on the official
No, it
information.
did not come back that way. That is incorrect.
Has the council withdrawn that statement?
Look, I think we're all clutching at straws here because you've asked us to consider something
Just
that
listen to the chair.
you're asking us today to consider certain facts that don't appear to be related to this motion that you're putting today. We're doing it. We're effectively flying blindly. So I really think that the appropriate outcome from this, and I'm happy for you to test this motion at this meeting, but I think the logical outcome is that we ask the staff to prepare a report, and that report then be distributed and considered, questioned, and then debated with this as one of the possible outcomes that you're seeking, Councillor.
Okay, so
But that's your call.
I understood that everyone had seen the email, and I'm surprised.
Yeah,
that they hadn't. So
and even if they have, there's an element of surprise now that that email is needing to be recalled by each of the elected members here and considered in the context of your motion, without there having been any notice given to elected members that this was going to be discussed today.
So I think, to be fair, can we have this moved to, if the room's in agreement, or to the council meeting next Thursday, and we can then discuss it from there to give people time to read the email that was distributed a couple of weeks ago,
Loosely.
which clearly showed that the City News had been hijacked by some political members at the expense of others, and I just think that this needs to be addressed immediately.
Happy to do that as long as there's a report that considers specifically what you're attempting to do in the motion.
So can we get something together by next Thursday?
Could we have a report by for the next Thursday's council meeting?
Just trying to think, it's for democracy, what would the deadlines be for a report next
Well, we can have a late report
I
as
think
long
the
as you get it on.
councillors will accept a late report a couple of days before. So we'll do our best, Councillor King.
Thank you.
The content of the report to be...
Yeah, I was just going to ask.
If not, there is another finance meeting scheduled for...
Well, I think it's getting far too close to the election, and meanwhile the City News is still rolling through the system and coming out and being distributed to 55,000 houses, which has up until now had political overtones, and this needs to be being looked at very carefully leading up to an election.
That's the point of order. I think those are just untruths to say that there are political overtones and there are rules around what's happening around what can go in the Hamilton News and what not.
Certainly today, we're not in a position to debate the comments that were made in terms of political interference with, alleged political interference with City News. We're not able to debate that today because one elected member who is the centre of that is not present, as well as also the suggestion that I may have been involved also in that alleged political hijacking, which I believe is incorrect.
Could I ask a practical question as well, not to go against what you're talking about, but to find out when the next City News is due to hit the streets, and whether a discussion at the council next week would be able to be in time to before the next issue sort of has gone too far down the track?
I'll ask the GM to respond to that.
So the next issue of City News is, so it's sort of stories are being written now, but it's due to hit the streets in the first week of September.
So a decision, should it be made at the next council meeting, would be in time in terms of being able to influence whether that went out or not, which is what this resolution is seeking.
So if a decision was made at the next council meeting to desist with the City News, then in theory we could pull that issue. Contractually, we need to give 20 days notice so for example, if we wanted to discontinue City News, in terms of our contract, 20 days notice to the supplier to terminate the contract. So there would be penalties in pulling a particular issue, and if we wanted to terminate permanently, then that requires a 20 days notice.
So potentially Councillor King could force on council the costs that he complained about when the other one was trashed. So what he's saying now is he's prepared to waste another $7,000.
Point of order, Mr Chair. I thought you'd ruled that there was to be no debate at this point.
Yeah, we're not, yeah.
Only when it's convenient for you,
I guess what we
I've
need...
only just read it now.
Well, there's two steps here. If Councillor King is happy to remove the motion and carry this or a similar motion over to the council meeting of next week. But I think we also need to understand what the content is of that discussion next week. Because we have, on one hand, we have the CE's local government information request, and we also have a motion which seems to be unrelated to that request, and that is to cancel further publication and distribution, which in itself, to my way of thinking, brings in a whole stack of other potential financial consequences around whether we have printing contracts and whether we have staff and so forth whose jobs may be at risk and may need to be factored into a report.
I want to know why he's
hang on,
information.
I've got other questions here. So,
I have a statement.
Sorry, well, yeah.
What ward do you represent? Can I just give some help to Sean? Sean, I think, needs to know what needs to go in this report.
And I'm about to state that was my
I'm going to do that, mate.
I bet you do.
All right, well...
well, I think we're looking for the content that is appropriate to fit around Councillor King's motion.
Can I suggest, and Councillor Mallett can correct me, is no, Councillor Mallett. No, Councillor McPherson's not interrupting me. Basically, we will outline which questions have been asked about the process for preparing City News, the reviews that's gone underway in terms of changing that process for City News. Where we can also include some information about the distribution and the uptake of the City News, because that's, I think, some of the information that some of the councillors have requested in this discussion now, as well as the impact of cancelling City News in terms of the financial impacts, the lead times, the contract, and so forth, plus anything else Councillor Mallett would like to add into that.
And the cost of preparation, distribution, printing, etc.
Yes,
so those are all savings, of course, if that happens. And also what the objective of City News is.
Yes, correct.
What on earth is what is the purpose of the thing, and is it achieving that?
Yep, because I have some recommendations which I'll put into that report in terms of how we can better leverage that approach, rather than using City News as the basis for communication as well. So I'd like to have an opportunity to put that forward in the report as well.
Could we also have the Lagoima request that has been discussed as an attachment to the report?
That would make sense, yeah.
Thanks.
I can reattach that, Councillor.
Yeah.
All right, sorry, you got a question? Can I just ask Andrew as mover? Is there anyone on the main? Sorry?
One chair of the meeting?
Yeah,
I thought you were the chair.
Well, I was actually going to ask Councillor King the same question.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Presumably it's about the removal of your motion that's on the
no, that wasn't my question. I was going to ask, Andrew, is there anything that we've asked Sean to do that you think, is there anything else that we need to ask Sean to put in that report?
I think the CE's got a pretty good handle on, from this discussion of what to bring. So.
Right. So you're happy with that motion to be removed?
To be removed, if the seconder agrees.
And is this the same motion you want to have brought to the meeting next week?
Well, I'll read the report when it comes out, and we'll reconsider then what, if any, motion will be put forward.
I'd like to move an amendment.
But there's no motion.
Well, we haven't got a motion.
We haven't got a motion yet?
No.
Okay, so we're not, that's been taken from the floor. Well, I'd like to move a motion then.
Okay, we're happy to do that.
Okay, it's around the City News. And I've heard the toing and froing and the accusations that people have been very free to fly with. And what I would like to propose, I'm not happy with the content of the report because I don't think it would go far enough. I would like that a staff report on the City News, the cost of the City News, its effectiveness and its value to not only council but to the public, is brought back to the September council meeting. And the reason I am suggesting September is because I think it's going to take more than just over a week or just under a week to collate the type of information that really gives us a true indication of what the value of the City News is. It's more than a roundup of what's happening at council. It's an opportunity for council to really state a position and to tell some good news, which doesn't always.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Excuse me.
Point of order.
No, let
No,
council
I have a
foresight.
point. I have a point of order. When moving a motion, that's fine. But we've now gone on to speeches before there's been a chance to have in favour of the motion. Before there's been a chance to check whether it's a proper motion, whether it's seconded, or any of the other bits and pieces.
Well, can I be helpful here? Can I be helpful here, councillors? My understanding as to Councillor Forsyth's request is exactly what I believe will be in the report that will come through to council next week, and that is the effectiveness, the value, and so forth of City News.
We are, as indicated, we're going to do our best to achieve all that. If there are issues, I will notify councillors and seek leave, take the September meeting. And I don't think we need a resolution to achieve that.
Right.
Good word.
So is that an acceptable? Is that an I mean, I agree. But the report needs to be as full and detailed as is possible. Otherwise, we end up making a decision based on rushed evidence, which may be to our detriment.
And that might suit some councillors, but it doesn't suit me. So yes, I'm
we'll have
just a bit nervous about the length
Okay.
of time that it's going to take. And Richard, I understand what you're saying, but is a week going to be enough to do the type of consultation and ask the right sorts of questions?
Councillor, the report that we could turn around in a week would be based on existing information we have, so we wouldn't have the opportunity to go out and, for example, survey the public on their views on City News. We've got some historic information. The last survey was done early 2015, so we'll be able to glean information from that. Realistically, we wouldn't be able to do anything ahead of anything more.
And that was my feeling. Thank you. That was my feeling. That's why I proposed to put this motion. And I also want input from councillors. I mean, just to.
Are you happy to consider that if we did receive a report next week, we would be in a better position to at least commence a sensible debate, which may lead to a further report at the following meeting if we did not have...
Well, no, I don't think a week's enough time to do what we need to do. But that's just my view. But as I said, I mean,
So have you got a clear motion that you want to put?
Yeah, yes I do.
Yep. Okay. Do I have a seconder for your second? No, okay. Do I have a seconder for that?
Is that supposed to be September? Or is it supposed to be next week's meeting?
No, September
my
instead
motion's
of
for
August.
September. I don't think a week's enough. That's my point. I don't think it's a week enough to get the right sort of information.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, do I have a seconder for...
Yeah, I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor O'Leary. Does anyone wish to ask any questions on this motion? Yeah, sorry, Gary. Yeah.
Margaret, I just wonder, given that there are clear implications that there's political interference in this and that City News has been hijacked by the political wing of the council rather than the executive wing, and that we are very, very close to an election, I'd be concerned that September the 29th is just too late, way too late to have all these things fleshed out. And this stuff needs to be done in the open, the questions need to be asked so that everyone can see what's going on and see who actually did influence what happened. And I'm concerned that your 29 September date is way too late.
All right, well, looks like we're in debate now, so let's continue the debate. Councillor McPherson.
Debate?
Well, I didn't get a question from Gary. It was a...
Oh, sorry, I was asking Margaret if she thinks it's too late.
Okay.
Sorry, do you have a question?
I have a question.
A question, okay.
So we've already got a
agreement from the Chief Executive that he's bringing a report to the next meeting, and I withdrew my motion on that. So that's coming either way. So there is going to be a report next week, and that will do exactly the same as what this is here. The last consultation with the public was only done a few months ago, so that's fresh anyway. We don't have to spend another 100,000 going back out to the public, or however many tens of thousands of dollars it's going to cost to redo what we did 6 months ago. So we've been told by the GM that the information's there that he can use. We've been told by the Chief Executive that he will come up with a report but for the next meeting, and that it will get on the agenda. And
we're in debate now, aren't we? This isn't a question.
So my question is to ensure that what I've asked for is going to happen for the next meeting, because whether this goes through or not is almost secondary. My understanding, Richard, is that a report's coming through next week.
We will bring a report next week that will be as best we can, given the information we have, and it will fill in the majority of the blanks, but it won't address the points Councillor Forsyth has referred to in terms of going out and seeking further information from the community in terms of the uptake and the value of the City News.
But
it will not include that part, but it will include all the historical information we have from previous surveys and so forth.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, well, we're in debate now. We're in debate. Yep.
Thank you.
Councillor McPherson.
Hypocrisy in council always interests me. One of the people, perhaps two, around this table that opposed and objected to Councillor King bringing up his resolution, then when having successfully moved that on, but with his agreement, I might add, to next council's meeting, then want to have one now to effectively prevent any debate before the voting papers go out. And I call that hypocritical. I think that Councillor King, Councillor Mallett and the CEO and the Chair have all adopted a reasonable approach to trying to get the discussion they want at a time that is perhaps more reasonable than today. Councillor Forsyth and Councillor O'Leary, however, want to force the issue for the debate today and to try and stomp on Councillor King's viewpoint before it gets a chance to be aired. And that I don't necessarily know that I want to stop City News myself, and I don't want to get into that debate now, but I do want to ensure that there is a fair discussion on it. And I think the proposal that was seemingly widely agreed to move that to next week was a way forward that could suit everyone. Instead, we're having people say, no debate, we're going to sort of push it out so far that it's a worthless motion. Well, I've got news for Councillor Forsyth and Councillor O'Leary. Should they happen to get the numbers today to do that, there will be a notice of motion to put that on this item on the agenda of next week's meeting anyway. There is time to do that. So why don't we all be reasonable and say, okay, there's some contentious views here. People are even angry at each other and don't agree with some of the things that have been said by others, but there is a way forward procedurally that's going to allow everyone to have a say. Let's be grown up and say, let's have the discussion as envisaged by the Chief Executive at the meeting and agreed to by Councillors King and Mallett, and have that at the meeting next week, and everyone can get their views out with enough time to prepare. Thanks.
Councillor Mallett.
Thank you. I think it's more, thanks Dave for your comments, but I think it's more an issue of the timing of the report. I've had a number of people who've come to me and spoken to me directly about this issue, because it's had a bit of media coverage now, and there are people out there who believe that this is an attempt to influence the election. They think that this was a clumsy attempt by someone, as yet unknown, or someones, to try and influence the election. And I'm concerned that if we don't get any report back till the 29th of September, this might influence an election. And I think we need to get this thing sorted out as soon as we can, as openly and as transparently as we can, so the whole thing's clean. So that's the only difference I actually have with you, Margaret, is just the timing. I think the timing you've got, it just doesn't get it done in time. Thank you.
Councillor Forsyth.
Thank you. Thanks, Gary. Thanks for those comments. And I understand where you're coming from. I think there are two issues here. The first matter was what I disagreed with, and that was no longer publishing the City News without any sort of background, no sort of report, and that's what I objected to, it just coming out of the blue. So that's why I've put the motion that if we want to stop the City News, I think it needs to be really checked out thoroughly, not just on a whim because somebody doesn't like what they've read. I mean, that's one matter. I think the other is the sort of thing that you're talking about. And I don't think it's fair that people make accusations when it's unfounded and when there must be a sense of natural justice when they're not even here in the chamber. It sounds like I haven't read the City News, so I don't even know what you're talking about in this regard. So it just seems unfair to me that not all the facts are known. So I do understand what you're talking about. I think there is still room, if we're going to be talking about whether we're going to ditch the City News or not, I still think there is some room for a full review, and I'm still happy to put that motion forward. Whether a report comes through with a different purpose than the one I have sought for the motion, then so be it. I won't stand in the way of that, but I still think that if this council is considering terminating City News, then we've got to have more information about that before we could fly into making decisions of, as a favourite turn of phrase for Councillor McPherson's, off the hoof.
Councillor
Yeah,
Turman.
Mr Chairman, I wonder why we're even going down this track, to tell you the truth. The City News has been around for many, many years, and of course there's a lot of members of our community out there who look forward to getting their City News in the letterbox. And don't forget, we've got a lot of people in the community who, they're elderly, they don't own computers, they don't look on the website to what's going on. And it's one way, I think, of the council actually communicating with our communities. So, to me, it's a no-brainer to even think about getting, we're even calling a report, which is going to waste staff time, cost money. If it's not broken, why are we worrying about it?
Councillor O'Leary.
I just wanted to respond to some of the comments around the chamber. Look, I have absolutely no political agenda around supporting this motion. I just think it's sensible to get a fuller report, and I certainly wouldn't have supported a motion from Councillor King just to scrap it without this information. Mm-hmm. But I respect any elected member's ability and right to be able to put a motion on the table. I did receive that email, so I do know what Councillor King is talking about. And like probably many other elected members, although he's getting the headlines for it, and as is Councillor Mallett, and that's fine, I also, as soon as I saw that within minutes, sent an email to the CEO with my concerns. But it was investigated, and well, look, we all have the information. I had absolutely no input whatsoever into the City News. I'm only ever involved in it when I'm quoted for something, and that's been obviously a long time because we're in an election period. So I just think, I often hear around the table here the louder elected members who have more to say, talking about getting the right information and getting timely information and giving staff time to put that together. I hear what Councillor Mallett's saying. I don't think that there is well, from my point of view, there's no risk politically for waiting till this report comes through. Sure, in a perfect world, we'd have a report tomorrow, we'd have a report today, and maybe that may have been able to be on the agenda if Councillor King had spoken to the chair earlier, perhaps. But yeah, Councillor McPherson, I have absolutely no political agenda here whatsoever. I'm simply supporting what I think is a sensible motion, and I actually do have some concerns about what happened with the City News, but I think we read through the CEO's investigation that people make some mistakes. I'm not as cynical perhaps to think that an elected member or several elected members, as has been alleged here, have hijacked anything, but perhaps that's my slightly naive view of the world.
Councillor Gallagher.
I'll pass this stage.
Any other speakers in the debate? Councillor Deputy Mayor Chesterman.
Yeah. Look, I was firstly concerned about the motion even being considered, which has now been removed, because I want to be able to debate and understand the issues. There was no information, no evidence, and any evidence was based around the conspiracy theory that City News was there in that particular issue that was trashed to influence the election. And what a load of garbage that is, because the issue was trashed. So that information wasn't in the public arena. And I think Councillor Tooman has hit the hot point in this discussion. People are enjoying getting City News free in their letterbox. And we've had research that shows 40 to 50% of people in Hamilton are reading it and getting their information from there. It's a flow of information, official information, some of it a bit boring, from council to the community. And what I say, and I will be saying when it's on the table effectively, is that terminate City News and replace it with what?
Point of order. We're now debating the motion that's not even on the books. It's been agreed to be put on there, as you can see. That is not the issue up for discussion. The issue up for discussion is basically whether it gets discussed at the council meeting next week or at a meeting in September. Yes. You finished, Deputy Mayor?
Well, I've been shut down as usual by Councillor McPherson.
You're so easy, Councillor Chester.
Councillor Gallagher, you now wish to speak?
Yes, I do.
Can I just have a point of clarification?
Yes.
Just going back to what Gordon just said, this isn't about whether we do it next week or whether we do it on the 29th. We're doing it next week anyway, regardless of whether this goes through or not.
That's my understanding, yes. That we will have a report of some sort.
Thank you.
Next week, yeah.
So can I just have that point of clarification? Is it what is coming through next week? Are we having two reports or one, and what's in the report next week?
The agreement before your motion was that Councillor King and Councillor Mallett withdrew their motion on the understanding that there would be a report that would be prepared with staff's best endeavours for next Thursday's, in terms of the content, by staff's best endeavours for next Thursday.
Late report.
A late report, thank you. I guess what your motion, Councillor Forsyth, is signalling is that you feel that staff will not be able to produce as in-depth report by then, and hence the possibility that there may well be a more in-depth report by the 29th of September.
Yep.
Is that?
Yep.
Is that?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it ends up that whatever issue it is that Councillor Mallett is wanting to address, if that can be addressed by next week, then that's fine, but it's all right to talk. I still think if we're going to be considering, and there has been talk of it around the table, for heaven's sake, there was even a motion to stop it, but it was withdrawn. If there's going to be some debate about whether we have it or not, I think we need to be making a decision based on good information.
Yeah. And without prejudging next week's meeting, this may be an outcome from next week's meeting, is that there may be some parts of the information that couldn't be got that needed to be obtained for September. So where I'm at currently is Councillor Gallagher, you wish to, and then I'll come back.
Thank you. No, I won't be
already spoken.
supporting the motion as per there. I think let's have that discussion next week, and I think September the 29th is a funny date in the sense that the reality is if there's substantive change, then that'll obviously be up to the new council to determine that. I think there are some issues which can be clarified. I think it's also important that we observe natural justice, and I want to commend the communications team of this council for the good work they do with regard to City News. I want to have assure Gary Mallett that I've had no political involvement and have not sought at any time to politically interfere with the content of City News. So I certainly want to assure him of that. However, I think it's very good that the Chief Executive perhaps takes the opportunity next week to perhaps clarify the rules around editorial jurisdiction and just get that cleaned up. And also, I think I would be wanting to ponder and reflect on lessons. And I think, you know, the particular article I think we're talking to about the Claudelands is a very good one to look at, to take some learnings actually from that. And I guess how does City News in future cover issues which are controversial and where there is clear differences of views around this table? So that there is an appropriate recognition of legitimate views held around this table as against just being, you know, the so-called official line. But I think personally, I agree with Leo, I think the City News personally performs a very, very good role, but I read a letter to the paper today, which was a good one, that, you know, it needs to be informational and we have to be, and the line, I guess, between, quote, propaganda and informational is a fine one. I think by and large the City News has been as a good product, but I'm looking forward to that discussion next week.
Sorry, Chair. As we're doing the elimination of association with City News, I'd like to follow Councillor Gallagher and say that I have had no influence over City News. I have never seen articles in advance. The only time I see City News on my computer is when comms send out to all members a note saying, here is the City News. So given that Councillor Gallagher has said he's not involved, I'm not involved.
Okay.
Other councillors should perhaps indicate to the chamber whether they have any influence over City News.
I think that'll be that'll be something for discussion next week. Before I go back to Councillor Forsyth to see if she has a right of reply, I'd just like to make a couple of comments. One, I think there are two issues involved here, and they're unrelated to a large extent. One is the issue of alleged political interference in the editorial content of City News, and the second issue is the motion that was up earlier about ditching the City News, which may or may not be related to the first issue. So it's a little bit, to me it sounds a little bit like having a dog which makes an inappropriate bark and then euthanizing that dog because of that inappropriate bark.
That's right.
Look, I think there are two issues here, and I suspect that the issue, and I'm not going to preempt what the discussion might be next week, but the issue that probably does need to be discussed and debated is that first issue, rather than whether you kill the dog as a result of the inappropriate bark, if indeed there has been an inappropriate bark.
But has the dog been neutered and registered?
So let's go back now to Councillor Forsyth.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a really good
Hang on,
point.
sorry, I apologise, Councillor King. Did you wish to?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'll let you speak before Councillor Forsyth has her right of reply.
So firstly, I just want to make this really clear. This is not about staff. All right, staff do a good job. Staff do their best to pull City News together, and this is certainly not about staff. And this is also not about headlining or electioneering, as has been suggested in some of these speeches. I would have brought this up no matter what at any time in the last 3 years, as you probably all know what I'm like on these things.
Can the council speak more directly into the microphone?
Okay, I'll start again.
Oh, no.
No, you don't have to say.
So, Gordon, what I said is, firstly, is that this isn't about staff. Okay, this is staff do, I believe staff do put 100% in, and if staff are encouraged properly, I believe staff put in over 100%. okay, staff are performers as long as they feel like they're useful and as long as they feel that they're contributing to the organisation and that they're valued. And to get more than 100% or 100% out of staff, we need to be doing that. And it's not about electioneering or headlining, as has been suggested in some of the speeches. This is something that I would have brought up at any time in the cycle of this 3 years. So it's not something that has been brought up because it's an election around the corner. The Lagorma request that was requested, which was circulated to everybody.
Point of order, is this speaking to my motion?
Yeah, it is.
It is, yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
I haven't got a Lagorma request up there. All it is talking about
I'm coming.
a report.
I'm coming to that.
Please, can Councillor King continue?
Thank you. So the Lagorma request that was requested, which was circulated to each one of the members at the time, because I went in and I checked that it was not just to me, that it went to everybody, clearly said that the city's news responsibility was staff's responsibility. It wasn't for politicians to be involved in it. But what the Lagorma request also clearly showed, which we've all had, is that there were elected members who were involved, particularly in the article that we're discussing, which was withdrawn because it wasn't truthful. This is an urgent matter because we're coming up to an election, and to be addressing this 8 days before the election, when about 5 people are in this table or 6 people are in this table are not going to be here from then on, and when 80% of the votes have been cast, while City News continues to roll out, is not appropriate. This is something that needs to be addressed urgently. And that's why I'm comfortable with the Chief Executive's assurance that a report as full as possible will be coming back to us next Thursday, where we can pick up from where we are now and discuss it further relating to these issues. I don't believe in this case that waiting until the 29th of September for a fuller report is with the urgency of this matter and what's the insinuations around the influence that City News has on every voter in the city is what's concerning. And that's why I'm quite comfortable with where we're heading with the report coming back next week in an urgent manner, in an urgent, so that we can cover off some of these issues that at the moment we're basing off one Lagorma request and other Lagorma requests from the media, which they have put their media stories around the information they've received back. So yeah, I won't be supporting this motion. I believe that's what we're going to get back next Friday. If that's not sufficient, then a motion can go up at that stage asking for more information.
Can I see?
Councillor Young, you haven't spoken?
Yep, haven't. Yep.
Okay.
Right. First of all, I don't know why we have this motion and about another report next week. I fully support what Councillor Tolman said about the City News, which is quite welcome from the community, even though I don't receive the City News in my letterbox. That's been 2 years now. I don't know why. Now, there is a report coming to Council anyway next week, right? And we're going to talk about the Official Information Act and the request and the response from CEO and all those. It might end up we will not have this motion anyway. If the City News been decided next week to cancel or whatever, okay, let's say if it's not, this is still relevant because I really want to see to have a report about the City News, how effective it is, what's the cost, whether it's welcomed by the community. And I just put aside next week report, forget about that. I will still go ahead to have a report on this. Of course, next week's report, the outcome of that report, that will determine do we have another meeting in September. There may not be. So to me, I will support this motion, but I think it's all subject to the outcome from next week's report.
Thank you. Any further speakers before I return back to councillor Forsyth, who hasn't already spoken? Councillor Forsyth, you're right to reply.
Yes, and I would like to ask one more question just to clarify. So the next week's report is going to have the Lagoima comments as well, is that correct?
That's correct.
But it's
understanding.
Okay. So look, as I said earlier, that there is a different purpose to my motion, and it may very well result of the discussions next week. So in a way it might be preempting, but I'm still going to leave it up there. If it gets lost this time round, it may very well be taken through next week. But as I said, the reason I put this up there was in response to the initial comments that the City News should no longer be published, and I think the City News is highly valuable to the community and to council. So I was very unhappy with that initial comment. And regarding the other purpose of the report coming for next week, which I think is more based around the alleged political intervention, then that'll be sorted next week anyway. Cool. So, I mean, I'm very happy just to keep the motion there and we'll just run its course.
Okay. All right, well, let's go to the vote now. Those who support the motion, if they could raise their hand, please.
Councillors Chesterman, Young, Forsyth, O'Leary, Tooman and Wilson.
Those against?
Councillors Mallet, Chairman Pascoe, Councillor Gallagher, Councillor King and Councillor McPherson.
DD. So
it's carried.
Carried.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. All right, let's move back.
Mr Chair, just for confirmation, that will mean reports going to both of the next council meetings.
That's right. Yes.
Thank you.
I have a motion that the report be received and the capital expenditure of 21.4 representing 31 projects is deferred.
Deferred to the 2016-17 year.
I'll move that.
Thank you.
That's what we've been on about.
Yeah, that
really
is
for
the
last,
original recommendation. Have a seconder for that.
Thank you.
Do I have any speakers?
I
Councillor
just
Mallet,
have a
wish to
question,
speak
and I
to
think
to the report.
yeah, and I think we're in the right part. Page 57.
Is this a question?
Yeah, unfortunately, it is. It's a real quick one.
It will have to be a very quick.
I promise you, would. It's page 57.7. Talks about tenancy inducements.
Free rent.
57.
So it's the big fold-out page, and
Yes,
it's
I can talk to that.
point 7.
So that's where if, when we had more property than we do now,
Sorry.
where we had more property than we do now, we would do upgrades to facilities to continue to keep clients or to bring them in. But given the our lack of property portfolio nowadays and the fact that there is still a surplus of office space, we haven't utilised that.
So we're not using tenancy inducements. I just wonder if this is the municipal endowment fund, is it?
And part of the properties that we own.
Can you
the properties that we own within that, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Or any property we own.
I guess it's always the issue when we're a competitor in a commercial property market. We've got the deepest pockets that anyone's got, and we're out there inducing tenants away from other people, aren't we?
No, I think it's...
Yes, we are.
Well, they're doing it.
By definition,
Possibly.
we must be to us.
But then that's what the inducement is there to retain that, to offset the cost of having that facility.
Just seemed I didn't realise we had a budget for that. Okay. Thank you.
Chair, just
Ask,
one
Deputy
quick
Mayor,
point. Councillor McPherson has just sent me one of his funny emails talking about the earliest known hearing aid. I raised Councillor King speaking into the microphone because a resident complained to the chief executive about councillors speaking into the microphone and identified Councillor McPherson as the worst councillor. So I was trying to arrange for that resident
Order,
who
order,
watches live
order,
streaming.
Order.
I'm going to buy you one of those hearing trumpets.
Order, please. We want to move this meeting as efficiently and expeditiously as we can. So let's stick to the motion that is on the floor, which was moved by the Deputy Mayor. Do you wish to speak to the motion? No. Okay. Any other speakers to the motion that which is the recommendation in paragraph 10?
With the change.
With the change, with the year change. Okay, I just have a couple of comments that I wish to make, and perhaps looking at some big picture comments about the financial results for the year ended 30th of June 2016. As Tracy has already alluded to, this is our second year of operating surplus, and the surpluses are well above what was budgeted for in the long-term plan, and we have discussed at this meeting some of the major reasons for that. It's also interesting that and favourable that our debt-to-income ratio is 170%, well below the 205 that was predicted. And even if we had spent the $21 million on the deferred capital expenditure, that ratio would have only increased to 180%. So we would have still been well below our predicted guidelines if we had completed that. So in terms of two major areas, our surplus and our debt, it's pleasing that for the second year in succession, and if you look at the debt over the last 6 years, the debt has continued to drop by, in my calculation, around about 100 million over the 6 years, despite the need to fund infrastructure. While the deferral of capital expenditure is larger than is desired, and I think we all agree, and I certainly agree with Councillor King and Mallet on that factor, at least if there is a redeeming feature, we now have more accountability as to which projects are being deferred on a project-by-project basis, and also the reasons why the staff are unable to bring these ones in as they originally predicted. Given that this is the second year of an operating surplus, it is with some confidence that Council appears, and I can say this with some confidence, that Council appears to have moved permanently away from the 9 years of deficits that preceded those 2 years. That and the continuing reduction in city debt gives a great deal of testimony to having a sound and fit-for-purpose financial strategy. It's certainly pleasing on behalf of this council to be handing over to a new council in October a much improved financial position than that existed 6 years ago and even 3 years ago when this council started its journey. So with that, I'm happy to move. I'm happy that we vote. Do you wish to have a right of reply?
No.
Deputy Mayor?
Could I speak, please?
Yes, you can speak, yes.
So I'm just going to take a much higher level view of this.
Higher than my level?
Yeah.
You can't get higher.
Straight from God.
That'll be, thank you. Please go ahead, Councillor King.
In questions to the Chief Executive, our books are looking good and our income's up because of DCs. We have collected a lot of DCs. And those DCs are collected to reuse back on infrastructure, and a liability goes with that income going forward. I've still got questions pending which I've asked the Chief Executive, which is still coming, around whether we invested enough 5 years ago when we culled things from our long-term plan.
You were told we did.
Deputy Mayor, can you please hold and let Councillor King continue with his...
I still have questions out, which I'm waiting for replies on in writing, asking whether 5 years ago when we culled projects from our long-term plan, whether that would have released more sections to the market today. Now, at DCs, what we've got to be careful of here is that the DCs are going to dry up because the sections aren't coming through, because the land isn't being put through and titled. And that's going to affect where we are going forward. And in effect, I'd propose that we're in a position as though if we're a manufacturer, we would have sold everything in the warehouse, but our bank balance looks fantastic and our books for the year look fantastic. But we've got a line of people at the warehouse door waiting to buy product and there's nothing left to sell. So I think we just need to be not open to champagne. I don't believe that things are as good as what they look. And I believe that we have partly led to the problem that there are no titled sections or few titled sections available on the market.
Point of order. He said in this chamber there were no sections available, and that is not the information that was shared with councillors the other day.
I said few. So could you rule on this point of order?
Well, yeah, continue, Councillor King.
Thank you. I said there was few sections available on the market. So I'm just saying, just a word of caution. Don't open the champagne bottles. We haven't got product left to sell. The DC income is going to slow down, and that is going to affect us going forward. Meanwhile, we're still sitting and carrying our liability for the DCs that we've collected. And what I'm suggesting here is investing in infrastructure is the core thing we need to do on an ongoing basis, because it takes 6 to 8 years for the infrastructure to come through to titled sections. And right now, because the price of sections has gone up $200,000, partly due to their scarcity, the price of all houses in the city have gone up by around about $200,000 over the last 18 months. And because of that, our first home buyers will struggle in this city to get into houses in the future. Thank you. I will be supporting the report.
Accepting it.
Are there any other speakers?
I will be voting for the report.
Are there any other speakers? Are there any other speakers in the debate before I come back and ask Deputy Mayor Chesterman if he wishes to have a right of reply?
Yeah, look,
Councillor Forsyth.
Yeah, I would just like to make some positive comments about the 10-year monitoring report and the good news. Second year in a row we've been operating in the black. I think it's fantastic news. And I was on that council when we had year after year of still operating in the red. So that's fantastic news, and it's been the result of a great financial strategy and a financial plan and us sticking to our guns. Look, I admit there were times when I wanted to respond to growth and look to spend more money, especially in our last 10-year plan discussions, and I still think those of us around this table that have said spending is wrong and we need to put the handbrake on, I think that those sorts of decisions will come back to bite us. But look, I'm going to wait for the report before I'm not going to jump to conclusions and say that the world is going to end. I'm going to wait and see what the staff report is, see what the facts are before I start making any comments about the state of land supply and affordability for homes. Thanks.
Any other speakers? Deputy Mayor Chesterman, do you wish to have a right of reply? All right, well, I'll put now the motion. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. It's 4:45, break time for a break. So let's all be back here at 4 o'clock, please.